Good morning, everybody. So, everybody knows what happened last Friday, right? Okay. It was Epiphany. So you went out, and I hope you had a great day on the holiday. You enjoyed all the great Epiphany. Okay, maybe not. So Epiphany, what's Epiphany? Epiphany is the day that we remember when the Magi came and presented Jesus his gifts. If you think about it, the way it's set up, it's the 12th day of Christmas. And 12 drummers drumming. I'm a drummer. That's the best way in the world to end a song. So, okay. So, the thing is, we know about Epiphany. We just sang about the kings coming and giving gifts. But there's not a whole lot we really know about this story. Luke 2, where we normally look for our Christmas story, he doesn't even mention them. It's only in Matthew that talks about the visitors from the east. So pop quiz.
Doesn't say.
Somebody right ahead. Okay. Yes, it doesn't say. Here, let's look at Matthew 2:1. So after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. So yes, it actually doesn't say. So why do we say we three kings? Three gifts. Makes sense. But how many big parties have you gone to where you didn't go in with somebody on a gift? The other thing is, so they came from east. We actually don't know where they came from. We actually don't know if they were kings. And so, can you imagine the song we just sang, something like, we unspecified number of government officials from out of town are. We unspecified number of government officials from out of town are. Just doesn't have the same flow. So, okay. Another pop quiz. The Magi showed up at the stable the same night that Jesus was born. True or false? So, hands up for true. Hands up for none of the above. There we go. We don't know. We've got a creche back there. We've got shepherds, and we've got a baby in a manger, and Mary and Joseph, and some donkeys, and three guys with crowns and camels. So back there, we kind of seem to think, and there's an angel too. And so it kind of looks like we're assuming everybody's one big happy gathering that night. But, yeah, we really don't know. We're told that the star was the sign that they followed. We're assuming. But if these guys came, and we're not even sure they're guys, if these guys came from some sort of distance, they probably didn't pack up everybody and everything, jump on their camels, and get to Bethlehem that night. The other thing to remember is they stopped in Jerusalem to ask Herod for directions. What's this with guys asking for directions? What's this with guys asking for directions? I don't know about this. Herod was like, let me check. And so he called his chief priests and the teachers of the law, got them together and said, what's this about the Messiah and all this? These guys who are here from out of town, they're asking me all sorts of weird questions. So research on the prophecies. They couldn't Google it. So it may have taken a couple of days for them to figure it out. And then once they figured it out, Herod sent them on to Bethlehem with a request that they come back, let him know what they found. So let's continue on in Matthew, going to verses 9 and 10. So after they'd heard the king, they went on their way, and the star that they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were over after they left Herod, which took them to where the child was. Now, scholars think they were still living in Bethlehem, even though they had come from Nazareth. So let's see what verse 11 says. On coming to the house, They saw the child with his mother Mary, and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. Notice the verse says, house, not stable, not inn. It also says child, not baby. So, luckily, they had found some better living arrangements, apparently. But maybe Jesus wasn't still a newborn. Now, do we know this for sure? Is it an error in translation? Let's go back over to Luke 2 and see what it says over there and maybe try to narrow down this timeline a little bit. Okay, when it came time to circumcise him, he was named Jesus, the name the angel had given him when he was conceived. Okay, so we know Jesus is now 8 days old. He's been circumcised, I'm guessing by a local priest in Bethlehem. Doesn't sound like anybody who's just got a whole bunch of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Okay, so let's go on and we'll look at Luke 2:22. So, when the time of the purification, their purification according to the law of Moses had been completed, Joseph and Mary took him, as it is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. Okay, so circumcision, trip to Jerusalem, to do the purification according to the Old Testament law. What Luke doesn't say here is that those purification rites and presentation are done 40 days after the birth of the baby. Luke does explicitly say that Mary and Joseph took the option that's provided for poor people. The normal sacrifice is to sacrifice a lamb. If you can't afford a lamb, you can do 2 doves or 2 pigeons. Remember the second day of Christmas? 2 turtle doves. That's where 2 turtle doves comes from. It's been given a bunch of very expensive gifts. So, are you with me so far? We're still not sure where the timeline goes. So, after the trip to Jerusalem, they go to Bethlehem, not Nazareth, back to Bethlehem. Maybe they're living with some of Joseph's relatives in Bethlehem. Again, we really don't know. Back to the wise men. So they've been following the star. They get directions from Herod. They go to Bethlehem because that's what the prophecy said they should do. They follow the star some more. They finally find Jesus and Mary at the house. Maybe he's at work or something, I don't know. They bow down, they worship him, they present him with gifts. Now, I don't know about you, but with the exception of gold, the 3 gifts that they brought really probably aren't high on many people's Amazon wish lists. But what these gifts reveal is that Jesus is revered as a king, not only by the Jews, but by Gentiles who maybe lived a long ways away. At the time of Jesus' birth, gold, frankincense, and myrrh were the traditional gifts given to royalty. And most Jews of the time these gifts. Now, frankincense and myrrh are both gum resins. They come from trees. Frankincense comes from trees in the Arabian Peninsula area. Myrrh comes from trees in Ethiopia. And they were used to make perfumes. They were used to make anointing oils. And the oils would be used to moisturize your skin after taking a bath, or they would be used to basically as a first century sunscreen to prevent you from, or to protect you from the rays of the sun in the Middle East. Now, for the kids' sermon, see me after if you want to get a whiff of frankincense and myrrh. It's interesting. And I have extra if you'd like to take some home. The oils that are made from these are very sought after, especially in the time of Jesus. The Egyptians would bury their pharaohs with hundreds of pounds of frankincense. It's said that when King Tut's tomb was opened up 3,000 years after his death, Frankincense, the smell of frankincense was still heavy in the air in the tomb. The Greeks would use it to honor their heroes. The Romans would use it to cure skin infections for their soldiers. The Chinese would bring precious porcelain to Africa by boat to trade for frankincense, which they used for respiratory health. The smell of the frankincense has a lot of religious importance. It's usually one of the ingredients that's found in Ethiopia. Many of the churches, you walk in, you're smelling frankincense. Now, myrrh is far more rare. It comes from a tree in Ethiopia, which is why in some pictures that you've seen painted, one of the wise men or one of the magi has darker skin because it's believed that maybe he came from Ethiopia. Arab men would drink myrrh mixed with fragrant liquids to cure baldness. I have myrrh here if you'd like. In India, it was used to cure. Yeah, maybe I need some too. The Chinese would mix it with breast milk to cure diaper rash. Now, this is some really chunky stuff. I'm hoping if they pumped and mixed it and wiped it on and didn't try to feed it at the same time. The logistics there I'm still trying to figure out. But anyway, very expensive gifts, but everyday uses. Now, because the resins from these two trees were so highly valued by so many of the ancient cultures, scholars say that these resins were probably at the height of their value. Some estimate that at the time, if we look at it in modern money, frankincense may have cost $500 a pound. Myrrh might have cost $4,000 a pound. Gold now trades at over $17,000 a pound. $17,000 a pound. So assuming that the Magi didn't go small in their gifts for the child king, Mary and Joseph were suddenly not very poor. Now imagine what the moment may have been like when the Magi showed up. One nobleman or high-level priest from Parthia, which is an area east of Israel, kind of where many of the Istan's countries are, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kurdistan, that area of the world. Well, included the Magi. Servants, cooks, probably an armed escort of a few hundred soldiers. So when they showed up at Herod's place, it caused quite a stir. He thought maybe he was being invaded. He wasn't quite sure what was going on. Bethlehem's a lot smaller than Jerusalem. Imagine the stir. Imagine a caravan like that showing up in Glen Carbon. What do you think everybody thought? Mary's walking around the house, opens the door. Next slide. Is there another next slide? Oh, no. I didn't do that picture. Dang it. Okay. And sees three guys here, three kings with crowns holding gifts. It was earlier. Okay, sorry, my bad. What do you think Mary did? I'm going to use Rita as an example. Sorry, I forgot to warn you about that. Do you think maybe she apologized for the condition of the house? Do you think maybe she did her best to offer what little hospitality she could to, 200-300 people at the front door? Do you think maybe she sent the neighborhood to go find Joseph and tell him to get his butt home? Can you just picture one of the wise men walking up to little baby Jesus, toddling around in his diaper, cooing at him, trying to make him giggle? Can you see Jesus reaching up and grabbing a handful of beard, and the guy's like, ooh? Can you maybe see one of the attendants pulling Mary aside and giving her that hint about breast milk and myrrh and diaper rash? Imagine what the people in town thought. I'm sure several of them just happened to go to Joseph and Mary's house. I mean, the town is going to be talking about this for a little while. Now, the Bible doesn't say how long they visited. I'm going to guess that they didn't stay too long to not impose more than they already had. I'm sure Mary was in a bit of a panic anyway. So at the end of the visit, the visitors said their farewells. Now we know by the story in the Bible that the Magi had been told not to go back to Herod. These guys followed the star. They're good at following signals from. They went a different way home. Herod figures this out. He's not happy. And so he issues a decree that all the babies born in Bethlehem who are 2 years or younger are to be killed. That gives us another clue that maybe Jesus may have been almost 2 years old when all this happened. Now, Joseph is, now we'll never know for sure, but family's from Nazareth. They've been living in Bethlehem for a little while. Maybe they've been able to scrimp and save a little bit, have a little bit of money. I'm sure they weren't saving up to go into exile in Egypt. Do you think maybe that gold, frankincense, and myrrh is what kept them going when they were in Egypt? Again, we'll never know for sure. It doesn't say. But isn't it amazing how much we really don't know about a story that we hear about every year? Now think about the life of years. You've got this teenage girl. She's visited by an angel who tells her she's going to become pregnant with the Son of God, no less. And she says, okay. Joseph marries her, even though he was well within his rights to have her stoned to death. She gets through the pregnancy. They get married, we think. They get through the pregnancy, and all of a sudden the Romans kick in and say, you got to go back to your ancestral homes. So now, 8 months pregnant, 8.5 months pregnant, Mary's riding on a donkey. Now, when we were in Ethiopia, we took a mule ride. Riding a donkey is not a comfortable process. I can tell you for sure. And so, now she's riding this donkey. She gets to Bethlehem, goes into labor, gives birth in a barn. It's been a hard night. She's dirty, sweaty, tired, probably in a little bit of pain. And all of a sudden, these dirty, stinky shepherds show up and tell her about angels singing in the hills, telling them to come and see this baby. And she's like, okay. So she treasures up all these things and she ponders them in her heart. Maybe because it's just all so, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And now, here she is working around the house. Jesus is walking around in his diaper. The caravan shows up. There are definitely people from not around the neighborhood. You can tell that by looking at them. And then they give her these unimaginable gifts that no ordinary Israeli citizen would even want to expect or think to expect. Over this short span of time, her world has completely changed. Can you imagine something like that happening in this day and age? Strangers from up on your doorstep with gifts that you wouldn't even think about a few days before. The beauty of it is, it's happening right now. Pastor Penny, 7 others from our church, and a couple from Godfrey are down in El Paso, getting ready for a mission trip, even as we speak. Checked my phone this morning, and it seems like they're still at the hotel. They haven't gone across the border yet. Sometime, about 8 o'clock there, so I'm going to guess in a couple of hours, this gentle soul named Jose Luis, who's an old friend to some of them, who will be a new friend to many of them, will show up at their hotel. He and maybe a friend or some members of his family will load them up in an old church van from Kansas and take them over the border to Juarez. They'll arrive at the team house, which is going to be their home for the next few days. To get settled in, figure out men and women are sleeping in which rooms, probably get the heater turned up because they're probably the first team this year, and so the house won't be completely heated up and things like that. Double check, make sure the plumbing all works, all that kind of stuff. Later today, they'll worship at a Methodist church, a short distance away from the team home. They might not know the words of the songs, but they'll recognize the tunes. Those who know a little bit of Spanish might try to sing along. Now, the members there bring their own tambourines to service to play while they're singing. The service will seem familiar and foreign all at the same time. They'll pass the peace. They'll listen to a sermon. The sermons there are longer than here. Feel thankful. The sermon may be translated into English. It may not be. They'll pray with these Christian brother and sisters, even though they might not understand the words that are being spoken. Now, after worship, they'll probably go with another friend, Martin. His mother runs a panaderia. My Spanish isn't real good. Which is a bakery. From her holding, there's no visible sign indicating that there's a business, there's anything more than a house there. Because in the more violent recent past, gangs would have come and tried to extort money from her if they'd have known she was running a business out of that location. After getting some really, 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 really good pastries, the travelers are going to return back to the team house for the afternoon for preparation and fellowship. They may, depending on the weather, walk over to the ice cream shop. They may go to the tortilla factory for some chips and basically pork rinds. I forgot the Spanish word for it. They may go to a larger bakery for pastries and churros for breakfast the next day. They may kick a soccer ball around in the street in front of the place. If some kids are around, they may get challenged to a game and get their butts kicked. After dinner, they'll have devotions, a little bit of preparation, and try to sleep. The old pros probably fall right asleep. The new ones, maybe have some trouble sleeping because of the excitement and not knowing what's going to happen. Tomorrow, Jose Luis will show up with a van, and they'll go to an opera. An opera is a poor area of Juarez. Areas of an opera are basically built on top of a landfill. They'll pull up in front of the house. It may be a home to a young family with small children. It might be the home of an older lady in frail health and her caretaker son. These people will see a couple of vehicles pull up in front of their home, and a group of people, definitely not from the neighborhood, will start piling out. Their lives are going to change. These wealthy strangers from a foreign land are bringing gifts that a short time before was completely unimaginable. They're going to have a sturdy new home. Now, the family might be currently living with extended family members in a home. They might have their own home. Again, we don't know, and I haven't had a chance to talk to the team. They actually don't know. Jose Luis will tell them when he picks them up. Their current home might consist of nothing more than shipping pallets, old tires, sheets of plywood stacked together, wired together, maybe with some tar paper or cardboard, the only barrier from the winter winds. And even though they're in Mexico, it's possible that the water outside will be frozen each morning when the team shows up to work. Now, you see, a few short weeks ago, this angel named Jose Luis appeared at their door. He told them that God had sent him to tell them that they were going to be given a new house. This group of Americanos would be coming to spend their own time and their own money to build a house for them. Perhaps they didn't believe it at first. Perhaps because of all the news from north of the border, they weren't quite sure what to think of people up there anymore. Perhaps they thought it was a dream. Perhaps they just took in the news and pondered it in their hearts. But now, the reality is beginning to set in. Over the last few days, this pile of sand, this huge stack of blocks, has shown up outside their house. Beginning tomorrow and over the span of 3 or 4 days, these strangers are going to transport concrete blocks, the sand, the gravel, bags of concrete and mortar into a solid, safe house. First thing they'll do is try to find some flat spaces and put down some boards, and they'll start mixing concrete so they can pour the floor. After several batches of concrete, the foreigners, they're walking around because they mix on the ground with shovels. No concrete mixing machines. Everything's done by hand. The boards that they're mixing the concrete on on Thursday will be cleaned off and used as part of the roof of the house. Once the floor has been poured and allowed to set a little bit, they'll start running courses of concrete block around the perimeter of the house. And they'll run that concrete block up to a height where the door and the windows can be propped in. The mixing is all done on the ground, and it seems like an unending stream of blocks is moving in the process to where the house is being built. These strangers, they speak a language that may be unfamiliar to the residents, but the kids that go by seem to understand and are able to communicate with them. But the thing is, the love and laughter that's being shown all the way around needs no translation. By the end of the second day, the walls are done. The progress appears slower than the day before, simply because of the height. But the house still seems to rise out of nothing. The strangers seem more familiar with the work. The Advil is kicking in. Whenever somebody walks by or drives by, some of the strangers, Pam Chamberlain, will wave and yell, "Hola! Te amo!" We're trying to telling people on the street I love you is not maybe the best way to greet them, but anyway. But there's a warmth and there's an enthusiasm there that just is infectious. As kids walk by, either going to or returning from school, the strangers will have gifts: crayons, coloring books, stickers, bubbles, soccer balls, any number of toys to share with them, to spend time with them. Maybe sometime during the week, the strangers will buy bundles of firewood that are being sold along the road on the way to an opera. Maybe they will use clothes to give to the family or to leave with Jose Luis to distribute to people who can wear them or to people who can sell them. Now, these gifts might not be as costly as the gifts that Jesus got, but they're no less appreciated. On the third day, the header will be poured up around the top area around the house. This will tie the walls together, and it'll provide strength and support for it as the high work is being done, as they're putting all the pieces together. And all of a sudden, there'll be this flurry of activity because now it's time for more concrete. And the concrete just keeps mixing and mixing in 3 or 4 batches of concrete. About 400 pounds of concrete mix, and water and sand will be mixed together to make that header. Maybe a neighbor with a baby will drop by, and all of a sudden, you'll have a half dozen would-be grandparents, aunts, or uncles coming up wanting to hold the baby and cooing at the baby, and baby grabbing at beards and things like that. On the fourth day, the roof is going to be built and tarred. Maybe there'll be a pickup soccer game starting nearby while the work is being done on the roof. Because the tar is so hot, the maestros who are helping to build the house take care of that part because they don't want the mission team working with the hot tar for fear of injury. At the end of the day, these friends, no longer strangers, friends from a foreign land, and the family will gather inside the house. They'll pray over the house. They'll pray over its new occupants. They'll pray over the keys to the house. And they'll give them a Spanish Bible, which all of them have assigned. There'll be hugs, there'll be tears, and then they'll leave. They'll jump in their vans and drive away. After the Magi left, life took some interesting turns for Mary and her family. Let's see what Matthew says. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." Is there one more verse? No. Yeah, and so he got up and took the child and his mother during the night, and they left for Egypt. Now we think they were in exile there for months, maybe a year. We learn that the Ethiopians think they went all the way down to Ethiopia. We don't know. When Herod had died, they came back, and they went back to Nazareth. And they lived a relatively normal life. The gifts of the Magi welcomed Jesus to our world as a king, and very well could have helped ensure his survival. Perhaps those gifts are what Mary and Joseph used to pay for their exile in Egypt, ensuring his survival in order to ensure his mission. After our mission team returns to Illinois, life in Ann Arbor was settled to a new kind of normal. But there will still be small reminders of the strangers, the gifts and the toys left for the children. The shirts that say Glen Carbon on them, wondering, where the heck is Glen Carbon? These gifts will have an immediate impact on the recipients in the cold winter months. The recipients of the house will have a longer-term impact because of their ability to survive and maybe thrive. But in both these cases, these are how we're called to live our lives as Christians. First, by giving our very best for Jesus. We don't hold back. We don't go cheap. We give the best we have. Second, by being willing to follow and we're given, no matter how long or how far. The Magi followed the star for what may have been a really long trip, and I'm fairly certain nobody said, "Are we there yet?" Joseph was given a sign to take his family to safety in Egypt, with no indication of time frame, no visible means of how he's going to pay for this trip, but he did it anyway. When we're given a sign, we're to follow it and not question it. By showing compassion to those we don't know. The Magi welcomed a king from a foreign land and of a different religion. Our mission team is building for a family most of them will never see again. You might pay the bill for the person following you in the drive-through lane. While these might all appear to be random acts of kindness, we believe that they are God-led acts of kindness and compassion. And finally, by trusting that the gifts we give or receive is beyond what the giver may have expected. I don't know if the Magi ever really considered what a poor family in Bethlehem was going to do with frankincense, myrrh, and gold. But again, it's possible these gifts saved Jesus' life. We don't know how the house is going to affect the lives of the family in Juarez or other families in the area or relatives. I know past houses have been built so when the family moved out of living with extended family into their own home, their former place. And so one home actually helps 4 families, not one family. We don't know. We trust that the gifts God has given will be used